It's Friday night and it's 8 p.m. and it means only one thing. We're rocking and we're rolling with professional wrestling. This is the Bagpipe Report. This week we've got an in-depth insider look at Brock Lesnar's controversial start in the NFL. We've got your SummerSlam preview with Brian Alvarez of the Figure 4 Weekly newsletter. We've got an exclusive interview with the Blue Meanie, promoter for 3PW, one of the all-time great wrestlers. You gotta love the Blue Meanie. Oh man.
Oh God, that's revolting. Have you no dignity?
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Bagpipe Report. I am Blake Norton, and we're going to start it off tonight in Hollywood. This September, John Cena is going to be taking a little bit of time off to shoot one of WWE's upcoming new in-house productions entitled The Marine. In other movie news, on a bigger scale, Adam Sandler is a big fan of wrestling. I'm sure a lot of you guys who've ever seen his movies have seen there's often a lot of wrestling talk in the movies, and there's a lot of references to wrestling. Well, he's finally got his wish, and upcoming is the new title, The Longest Yard, which will feature Goldberg, Steve Austin, Kevin Nash, and Bob Sapp, all of superstar professional wrestling fame. Keep your eyes out for that one. It's going to be packed full of wrestling goodness. Shelton Benjamin was on the injured list, but injured list no more. He made his return to WWE house show duty last weekend. Also coming back soon is going to be Christian. There's a lot of talk that he might be back in the ring even before SummerSlam this Sunday, but if not, he might be making his return at the show. Also returning soon is a bigger show, The Big Show. He's returning to the SmackDown locker room next month sometime. Also in post-SummerSlam news, it looks like there's a big show scheduled. Kane versus Shawn Michaels is going to be taking place in Dallas, Texas. That's going to be happening on September 5th, which tells us a couple of things. A, Shawn Michaels is indeed returning to the ring, and obviously he's doing it for keeps because it's only a house show, and with the injuries Michaels has had, it's great to hear that he's still going to be working a lot of those shows once he returns to the ring. B, he's working with Kane, which means that Kane is going to continue the feud he started with Michaels shortly after Bad Blood in June. C, since Kane is wrestling a performer the caliber of a Shawn Michaels, I think it's safe to say that poor Matt Hardy's going to get the crap knocked out of him this Sunday at SummerSlam. Also in injury notes, it looks like Trish Stratus will be returning to the ring soon. She's had a hand injury, but she's scheduled to be wrestling Victoria shortly after SummerSlam. We mentioned a couple of weeks ago that Akio and Sakota were being sent down to Ohio Valley Wrestling. Now appears that Ryan Sakota has been released from WWE. Best of luck with your future adventures there in the wrestling business, Ryan. Also, when it comes to contract news, it looks like Rob Van Dam, there's a lot of talk that he has signed a new contract with WWE. Don't have this 100% confirmed yet, but it looks like he's staying on for another couple of years. And finally, in news, it looks like Randy Orton is getting a big push in WWE, judging by, some of those same house shows that list Shawn Michaels as wrestling Kane. They also list Chris Benoit as facing Randy Orton. Chris Benoit, challenger, Randy Orton, World Heavyweight Champion. Now in TNA news, we march forward. There's a lot of speculation that the TNA pay-per-views will be ending in September. There's currently a listing going on for 3 weeks in a row. They're going to be having best of shows. They're going to be having the best of the X Division, best of the tag team titles, best of the World Heavyweight Championship. We're going to see how this breaks down. We're not 100% sure on this, but it looks like very soon TNA is looking at cutting one show or the other. We know it's not going to be Impact because they just got that deal, and with Impact on Fox Sports Net, they've got the chance to grow. Speaking of Fox Sports Net, Monty Brown, he was on Fox Sports Net last week, and then he was on ESPN2. Because Monty Brown, one of TNA's stars, has that legitimate NFL background, a little bit of an inverted Brock Lesnar, if you will, they've been pushing his name as much as they can to get TNA over as a more legit company and a legit sport, and using his name to get him out into some interviews, which is a very good strategy, and we'll see how that pays off in the next couple of weeks. And finally, as we move forward, possibly onto new shows and possibly this whole changing of the pay-per-views, there's some talk that Spanky's going to be coming in. Brian Kendrick was backstage at Impact last week. Time will tell. He's been spending a lot of time over in Japan working for 0-1 since he split with WWE about this time last year. Here's hoping that one of the great young talents, Brian Spanky Kendrick, will be back on our screen soon for NWA TNA. On to Ring of Honor news. Doug Williams, our very proud, right here from the UK and Ireland, our very proud champion of Ring of Honor for Pure Wrestling. He's going to be defending the championship internationally, and by internationally it means he's coming home with the belt. That's right, Future Shock Wrestling will be featuring Doug Williams taking on challengers from all over the world very, very soon. So check out Future Shock Wrestling for more information on that one. It can only be great stuff for the future of the Ring of Honor belt that Doug is able to defend it around the world, much the same way that he's defended the FWA Heavyweight Championship. In fact, you might remember that Doug had to go all the way to the U.S. to bring back the FWA Championship from Chris Daniels. Now he's doing a little bit of a reverse. He's going over to the U.S., taking one of the biggest titles in North America and bringing it right back here to the U.K., which is great news for fans over here and great news for Ring of Honor. On October 2nd, one of our favorite people will be involved in a very special event for Ring of Honor. It's going to be Jim Cornette and the Midnight Express, talking about Sweet Stan Lane, beautiful Bobby Eaton, and Dennis Condrey. They're all going to be doing a special event. It's the first time together I've heard in over a decade. Make sure you check out Ring of Honor's official website. If you're anywhere near the East Coast of the United States, they're going to be doing a big Q&A session. There's going to be a little bit of a wrestling card going on that day and all sorts of other great things. That's October 2nd, so check it out. Now, last weekend, Samoa Joe, as we talked about in the last TBR, went in defending the Ring of Honor Heavyweight Championship. He went in injured, but he wasn't the guy who came out injured. That was the challenger, Trent Acid, who left his match with Samoa Joe. He wasn't successful in taking the championship, but had a great match in the process. He left the ring with an injured ankle. Apparently, he sprained that ankle and he bruised that heel bone. He was taken straight to hospital, so best of luck to Trent Acid as he recuperates, and hopefully he'll be back in the ring in the next couple of weeks. Finally, if you enjoyed the Iron Man match on Raw a couple of weeks ago between Chris Benoit and Triple H wrestling for 60 minutes, you're going to love the other match they had on that night. American Dragon, Bryan Danielson, Austin Aries, they went for a best 2 out of 3 falls match that went so long that the first fall was 45 minutes. Think about that one if you think about Iron Man matches. During my travels in the sport, I've often had trainee wrestlers, aspiring wrestlers, ask me the way to perform various moves, what's the best way to approach the ring, all sorts of various questions, and that's the topic for today's Norton's Notes. When I started in this business back in 1999, I trained for 8 months in the dungeon. I've only had about a dozen professional matches. I've been very lucky, though, in that I had the opportunity to spend 8 months sponging off Bruce Hart and Ross Hart and Stu Hart. Up in the dungeon, there was wrestlers from all over the world, and it was the best place in the world to train as far as I'm concerned, because I've had the chance to see a lot of other places in the meantime. Before I started up here with TWC, I was helping with IWW in Dublin City. There was a whole bunch of trainee wrestlers. They wanted to be wrestlers so bad, and I had these 8 months in the dungeon, so I did my best to help them get their first step in the business, help them start their bumps and their various starting positions and the fundamentals of pro wrestling. I've only been wrestling not that long, and with these guys, I tried to do the same thing that I've done all the way through the years. And I find it interesting that when people talk about wrestling styles, they talk as if there's only one way to do it. What's the right way to do it? The truth is that there's no one right way to do it. If you go to Japan, people hit each other real hard, and they take great pride in their characters. They respect their wrestling. I love that so much. I'm not sure if I'm up to getting hit that hard, but I love watching it. Down in Mexico, you've got a whole different style entirely. It's very acrobatic. There's flips, there's dives, and they actually wrestle the mirror reverse of the way they do in Japan or in North America. Then you move to the United States, and you've got a whole melting pot of different styles. And in fact, it's so versatile that 2 of the guys who are considered the best wrestlers ever by many, Bret Hart, Ric Flair, started in the same continent, spent 20 or 30 years wrestling the same guys, and they can't even find a nice word for each other. As you can imagine, it's a very subjective business. A couple of weeks ago, we had AJ Styles here in studio, and after we had him on the Bagpipe Report, he went along to that same gym that I was helping start guys off at, the IWW gym in Dublin, and gave a good speech, a good talk about how the fundamentals of wrestling are so important, so much more important than the amazing flips and dives that he can do, which are very secondary when it comes to wrestling. One of the things he did was he got in there with one of my guys, and he threw him into the ropes, and Dan didn't grab the rope. And he said, "Oh man, you're not grabbing the rope. You got to grab it like this." One of the trainees turned to me and said, "Hey Blake, didn't you tell us that we're not supposed to grab the rope?" I said, Yeah, I did." One of the aspects of working in the dungeon that people don't really appreciate, and I suppose don't notice, is that because there's guys from all over the world and all the time, when I started out, I had the chance to see it. There's more than one way to do things. There's a lot more than one way to throw a head mare. There's a lot more than one way to even do simple things like take a bump. When it comes to wrestling training, there's only some very simple fundamentals. One, train yourself. And by that, I do not mean train yourself. I mean get training. Don't start unless you've been shown how to do it by someone you trust. You trust where they came from, you trust their integrity, they trust they know what they're talking about. They're going to teach you how to protect yourself and how to protect your opponent. Those are the most important aspects of wrestling. Past that, when guys like AJ Styles say you got to grab the rope, in his case, it's because they want to tell you what they know. They want to help you out. They want to impart to you the knowledge they've picked up on the road. A lot of cases, there's a lot of guys that are, yeah, I know how to wrestle. No, kid, you got to do it this way. You got to do it this way. Yeah, oh, there's my pager. Vince McMahon must have lost my number. He'll be calling me any time now. But those kind of guys are usually a dime a dozen in this business, and more often than not, their talk is quite cheap. The important thing in this business is that you protect yourself, you protect your opponent. After that, how do you wrestle? Well, how do you write a book? There's more than one way to do it. There's infinite ways to do it. This is a sport where we're pretending to beat each other up. This is a sport where 50 years ago, if you take any of the stars from back then and show them a tape of what's happening now, God, even the greats that have passed away would be rolling in their grave when they look at WWE's product or TNA's product or even Japan or Mexico most of the time. Bret Hart even said himself, one of the most respected legends, that Mexican wrestling makes me sick. Everybody sees wrestling a different way, and you don't have to see it like anybody else at all. Anybody who tells you differently is usually full of their own mumbo jumbo. At the end of the day, the wrestling business and how you wrestle, the scope of what being in the ring means, it's as big as your imagination. That's what the business is about. That's how the great characters came through. That's what makes wrestling special. If you're not special, and if you don't do things your own way, nobody's going to buy a ticket to watch you wrestle. That's this week's Norton's Notes. Move over, Spider-Man. The truly amazing is Red. Amazing Red nails a super Hurricane Rana right off the top rope on the phenomenal AJ Styles for this week's Bagpipe Report Move of the Week.
Oh, how can they hold the balance? Oh, you
This Sunday, we've got an amazing supercard for you. We keep it right here at home with the FWA. We combine two of the top shows of 2003. I'm talking about Frontiers of Honor and Vendetta. We've got some amazing matches. Of course, we've got so many of those stars from Ring of Honor and Stateside clashing with the top stars from England. Some great matches here. Jody Fleisch and the Fallen Angel Christopher Daniels, Low Key and Flash Barker, Zebra Kid and Samoa Joe, Super Crazy and Johnny Storm, Paul London, Mikey Whipwreck, and a whole lot more. I'm really looking forward to this one. I haven't seen it yet, so I'll be tuning in with you guys. Here's a little bit of a preview of this Sunday's Supercard from FWA right here on the Wrestling Channel. Okay, right now we're on the line through to Minnesota. We're talking to Kevin Seifert of the Star Tribune. Brock Lesnar, just 4 months ago, Brock Lesnar was fighting Bill Goldberg at WrestleMania. Now 4 months later, Brock Lesnar is an actual football player, and Bill Goldberg is playing one in Adam Sandler movies. Now, when people heard that Brock Lesnar was leaving wrestling to go to the NFL, there was a lot of skepticism in wrestling, and absolutely among people, fans of the NFL and players themselves as well. What were your thoughts when you heard that this wrestler, Brock Lesnar, was going into and trying out for the Minnesota Vikings?
Well, I mean, I thought it was interesting. Brock, before he was a pro wrestler, was an amateur wrestler at the University of Minnesota. A lot of people around here had already heard of him and knew how great of an athlete he was, and how physically strong he was when he was an amateur wrestler. Training camp traditionally in the NFL is a time when there's not a lot of publicity and a lot of things going on. And so anytime you get a guy with a name like Brock Lesnar, it probably adds a little PR and a little publicity to what's going on. So I think all those things kind of played into it. Now, if he were to somehow make the roster, the final roster, and be on the team during the season, I think that would be very surprising. But as far as the training camp thing, it's not that different.
Now, I read your article in the Tribune last weekend about the game between Minnesota and the Chiefs, talking about how aggressive Brock Lesnar was on the field, and I thought some of the quotes from him were great. One of them here, I'm getting up there and causing some havoc, that he doesn't care what the Chiefs think about it, and how the coach for the Vikings seemed to really like that attitude. How well is he fitting in the locker room?
I think he's fitting in pretty well. I mean, he's not your average rookie. Usually in the NFL, the average rookie gets a little bit of hazing, has to sing his college fight song, has to do a whole lot of stuff, and I think he's probably avoiding that just out of the respect they have for him as having been a pro wrestler and an amateur wrestler. I think the Vikings coach, who is Mike Tice, likes his aggressive attitude, but wants him probably to curb it a little bit. You can't have just random brawling in football or get a penalty, obviously. So I think he wants him to kind of control that aggression and use it for the right purposes. If he can do that, I think he'll definitely fit in well.
Do you think it's a plus or a negative that Lesnar has such mystique? As you mentioned yourself, he was a tremendous amateur wrestler. He's had much success in pro wrestling, former WWE heavyweight champion, and a lot of people will be aware of WWE. A lot of people know about wrestling. Do you think that's a good thing because people will hear the name and go, ooh, Brock Lesnar, let's see what's going on? Or do you think it'll be a bad thing as time moves on, that it'll cause a stigma, and people, even if he is effective on the field and even if he gets better at playing the football as opposed to simply his physical attributes, which are admittedly very good, do you think that'll be a stumbling block because people will always think of him as just a wrestler?
I think more than them looking at him as just a wrestler, they're looking at him as a guy who hasn't played football on any level in 9 years. So I think that's what people are kind of focusing on more than anything. I mean, there's been crossover athletes in different sports in America, and that's not too out of control. But what is surprising is there's very rarely a guy who plays football in high school and doesn't play in college or any kind of semi-pro or anything, and then becomes a successful pro football player. That's very difficult to do, and I think that's what people are focusing on more than anything.
And finally, let me ask you, I'm going to put you on this hot spot here. In the next 12, 18 months, what are the chances of Brock Lesnar making the squad, the full-time team, on a regular basis?
Not that high. I think at best he'll be on what they call the practice squad, where he won't be eligible for games, but he'll be able to be on the team and be in practice. And then they may in fact send him to NFL Europe to get some actual playing time and on a lesser scale, and then bring him back to training camp next year and see what happens then.
Excellent. Well, Kevin Seifert of the Star Tribune, thank you very much for talking to us here about one of our dearly beloved departed, Brock Lesnar. Take care.
Okay, no problem. Thank you.
Okay, this Sunday, WWE presents SummerSlam. It's their biggest pay-per-view of the summer, second biggest pay-per-view of the year after WrestleMania. On the line, editor of the Figure 4, Brian Alvarez from Washington in the United States. Hey, Brian, how are you doing this week?
How's it going?
Good, good. Now we're going to do a little preview of SummerSlam here. We're going to have you back next week to do a full rundown of the show. There's been a lot of talk about what's happening post the show. We've already heard that Kane is going to be working with Shawn Michaels in a house show in September. We've also heard that Randy Orton is scheduled to be defending the world title after the pay-per-view. Are these surefire signs that Orton is going over and that Kane is going to slaughter Matt Hardy in horrific fashion?
Well, pretty much nothing is certain until after the show's over because Vince has changed his mind, on a million different occasions about a million different things. But, right now, Orton's going to win, and I really don't know what they're going to do with Kane, but I think most likely it's going to be Kane's about to get the win and Shawn Michaels makes a save, so Matt can marry her, and after he gets knee surgery. So he'll probably be destroyed whether he wins or not, but they will do Shawn and Kane after that.
Cool. Moving on, we have a double main event. First of all, The Undertaker versus Justin Hawk Bradshaw. God, I'm going back to his really old gimmick name. We have John Layfield. How do you see this one going? Is Taker taking the title?
I highly doubt it. In fact, I'm probably going to have John Heidenreich run in to set up a feud with Undertaker, which is kind of bad news since they're going to do that in another one of the matches, and it's kind of overkill to do it so many times on one show. But I think they figure that since it's two different brands, they can do the same thing for two different matches. But I'm not expecting much from this because they've been doing it on the road and it has not been good. So unless they turn it around this week, don't expect it to blow you away.
And is Randy Orton ready to be world champion at this point in his career?
I think that they should have Benoit retain, and then somewhere down the road, Hunter wins it from Benoit, and then Orton as a babyface can do the road to WrestleMania for the belt. But I think they've got completely different ideas.
Like
and,
mirror reverse
they want to put it
plans,
on now, and I guess that's what they're going to do.
And also we've got Eddie Guerrero taking on Kurt Angle. What are you looking for from Angle? How is he right now? Should we expect him to be wrestling on a full-time basis, and should we be expecting a 100% Angle come SummerSlam?
He worked on SmackDown, and he was good. He was really good. And he's been working on the road, and he's been asking them to do long matches so he doesn't blow up in the ring. And I think either this or Benoit and Orton is going to be the best match on the show, and it'll probably end up being Benoit and Orton, which, that should be a hell of a match. But it should be good.
And overall, to me, it looks like the best card since Mania, or maybe even before that. I think it's going to be one of the best pay-per-views we've seen this year. Do you have high expectations of what we're going to see at SummerSlam?
I have pretty high expectations just because I think two of the matches are going to be really, really good. But it's horrible to say this, but I would rather watch the Pride Grand Prix live, but I don't have a choice, so.
Well, Brian Alvarez, thank you very much. We're going to have you back next week. SummerSlam is this Sunday, and we'll be back this time next week for your full SummerSlam review. Thank you for joining us.
All righty.
Well, Pat Roach is one of the stalwarts of our business, especially abroad where I worked a lot with Pat in Germany. And I always remember one year when we'd done a big tournament in Hanover, and Pat won the tournament, the World Championship, and he came back in the dressing room. And he looked at myself, Steve Haggerty, Roy St. Clair, Tony St. Clair, Caswell Martin, all good names, and he said, without the English boys, there is no wrestling in this world.
We've all mentioned the sad loss of Pat and the suffering he did, but believe me, Gene suffered a lot more with him. So, from all of us here, Sarah would like to present this to Gene.
Ladies and gentlemen, for the FWA, Mr. Alex Shane. Flash Parker.
Well, just take your attention for one moment. I'm very humbled to be in such distinguished company, and it just makes me feel what a great game wrestling is. If I had my time again, I'd do it all over again.
Thank you, Bill. Long overdue for the award. He is wrestling. Mick McManus.
Oh, wow. Wow. You get what you deserve, don't you? Anyway, thank you very much. I didn't mean that last remark, honestly. I'm a very humble person, believe me. But once again, thank you very much. Very kind of all of it. Love to see you again here next year, God willing. Bye-bye.
Okay, on the line right here we have a world famous superstar. You've seen him from ECW, from WWF, WWE, and much, much more. Right now he's running his own promotion, 3PW. You've seen it right here on the Wrestling Channel. You've seen him wrestling as well. Please welcome to the show. Of course, we've got no studio audience, so you can just clap where you are. It's the Blue Meanie. How are you getting on?
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Now, first question. What in God's name, you sadomasochistic character, possessed you to start a wrestling promotion, 3PW?
Well, we were sitting around one day, and we had a friend who actually wanted to start running some shows, and some guy was trying to scam him into buying some indie fed that nobody knew about for some ridiculous amount of money. And we're like, look, if you want to run a wrestling promotion, maybe let's try one show and take it from there. And you know, he financed the first show. He liked how it went, and then we're like, sure, let's go for it. Let's go from here on out. And you know, I also factor in the fact that, you know, my body's not going to last forever in the ring. So, you know, I mean, between all the, you know, falling and, you know, going through tables and whatever, my body's just not going to hold up. So I'd rather, you know, start doing something behind the scenes to give back to the business that gave me so much.
Well, that's a lovely thought. How often do you wrestle these days?
I'm not doing too many indies, just for the fact that I want to concentrate solely on 3PW. I mean, besides the wrestling I'm doing, we just filmed a movie last week up in northwest Pennsylvania. So I'm doing a lot of the, I'm trying to get into acting as well. We're doing conventions, you know, spreading the word of 3PW, you know, and trying to meet as many fans as we can.
What do you hope to do with the promotion? Are you happy with the size it is now? You guys have been running about 2.5 years. You've been running just about every month during that time. Are you looking to up the number of shows or expand your regions, or do you want to just concentrate within the realm that you're operating right now?
We do have plans of running more than once a month, but I mean, it's just, you know, progression. We don't want to grow too big too fast. I mean, history has dictated that, you know, that it's not good to explode right away. I mean, ECW is a prime example. I mean, I believe if ECW would have stuck to being just a regional promotion, that it would still be around right now. I mean, it had that underground feel, and, you know, people were just, you know, dying to eat it, you know, eating it up, you know, dying to see the tapes and all that good stuff. But they grew too fast, too big, too quick. And I don't want to, you know, repeat history. You know, I just want to take it, you know, one show at a time, and eventually, you know, we'll try to build a bigger audience, and then we'll expand to those different areas.
Do you think that in the case of ECW, that if Paul Heyman hadn't grasped out that far, that people would have gotten frustrated, or do you think it was a case where he reached for too much too soon, and that's why the financial problems took ECW down?
It was definitely too much too soon, and bad bookkeeping. I mean, he had a lot of talent, but he also had to pay that talent to, you know, to stay with him. He had to pay him a little bit more than an average, you know, indie promotion would have to pay him to keep him from going to Vince McMahon or WCW. And, you know, the houses weren't meeting the guarantees that he was paying these people. But, I mean, it's a combination of that and just going too big, too fast, running bigger buildings, and then the whole fiasco with TNN was probably what put the final nail in the coffin.
What's it like for you now to walk into the Viking Hall? Now, when you first went in there, probably in the mid-90s, you were, of course, in a position where you didn't even have a spot in the card for ECW. Now you go back in, and you're, in fact, in the position of the promoter. Instead of being you're now in Paul Heyman's position, 2004. What's that like going in there in that position?
I just wish I could have half the creative juices as Paul Heyman. But it's definitely different. I mean, it's not just me. It's me, it's Jasmine, and it's Todd Gordon. But for the most part, I have brought in most of the talent, like the younger card guys that, you know, might not have had the opportunity to work for us if I didn't, you know, go through all the tapes. I view every tape that's, you know, mailed to us. I look at every 8x10, and I just, you know, try to give people the opportunity that I had. You know, I mean, not every tape that's sent's going to, you know, guaranteed employment, but they'll be on the back burner just in case we have an idea and go, hey, that guy had this, kind of look. This is what we need. Let's give him a call and give him a shot. For example, the prime example right now is a wrestler we have named C.J. O'Doyle. I went to a wrestling school just to roll around in the ring, and I was teaching this one wrestler a few new moves because he wasn't too sure about it, so I went with him. And C.J. O'Doyle was there, who is Gary Wolf's student, and we rolled around a little bit and wrestled. And he's like, is it okay if I come to the show? It's like, yeah, we don't have any spots right now, but if you want to help with security, I mean, we could definitely use some help. So C.J. O'Doyle did security for almost a year, and then we said, you know what, let's put him in the ring. Let's see what he does. And he went in the ring, and he earned his spot. He went out there, he tore the house down, and now he's got a spot with us, for the last year and a half actually wrestling.
Mm-hmm. What's it like going in now? Are you able to have as much fun in the ring when you know that you're thinking about number of people in the audience even more than ever? You're thinking about the money factor. You have to be concerned about the booking, who's booked. Of course, you're now in a position where you have to think about all the matches in the card, not just yours. Is it as much fun going out there?
Yeah, the time I'm in the ring is probably the most fun I do have at the show, because I could just, forget about certain things and just go out there and just, do what I do, whether it be a goofball or, if the angle calls for me to be serious, I can go out there and be serious. I still love this business. It's what, I sacrificed a lot in my life for, and, I'm far from over, far from done in the business.
I'm going to keep that one. It's going to be on a best of TBR.
Yeah.
The Blue Meanie has this to say.
What was that, 40 and slip? I'm far from over. Actually, that's a Frank Stallone song.
Would you be interested in, you were talking about how your body can't hold up forever, and you've been wrestling for 10 years now. Would you be interested in going back on a full-time schedule if WWE or TNA or somebody came up to you and said, here, we want you to work full-time again? Would you be interested in doing that?
Not right now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm just happy doing what I'm doing now. If I'm devoted to one thing, I stick with it pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm never saying never, but I mean, if the time came along, I probably would. As far as my body not holding up, like right now, I've been having like a hip problem for the last, I want to say 4 months.
Mm-hmm.
Where, if I sit for too long in one spot, or if I walk or stand too long, my right hip just starts nagging me, in my knees. So, but, I would never say never to actually going back, because I had a blast when I worked at, WWE and, ECW, and TNA is a great company as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, given the circumstances around the opportunity, I would, say yes or no, depending on the circumstances.
So would you have any interest in TNA? That was my next question. TNA or Ring of Honor, what do you think of their product, and would you be interested in doing something with them at some point?
We're back on friendly terms with Ring of Honor for the last maybe year, half year.
Mm-hmm.
We had made up with Rob Feinstein back in maybe November at the Jersey All Pro convention. His table just happened to be near ours, and we're just like, let's go say hello. Let's go say hello. So we went over, said hello, and things, were cordial. And then his scandal broke. So we
everything,
yeah, we kind of backed off from that. But,
that was a good move. You're a man for politics. You know when to play your cards.
Yeah. So I mean, I always knew this, Rob, was, that he was, homosexual, but I didn't know about the other stuff. But then again, it hasn't been proven in court of law.
Yeah.
So you gotta give the man the benefit of the doubt.
Mm-hmm.
That's, but he was a good guy. We made up with him at the Jersey All Pro convention, and I started talking to Gabe. I still talk to Gabe to this day, and Ring of Honor is, from what I heard, it's a very good product. I've only seen maybe a handful of shows. I had one of their videotapes, watched it. I thought it was good. I've seen their TV show. I thought it was good. TNA, on the other hand, I've only seen the pay-per-views when somebody has it on. Somebody's like, "Hey, I'm watching TNA tonight. You want to come over and watch it?" And that's sure. But now with the TV show on Fox every week, I catch it when I can. And they have a lot of talented guys, and it's run. The Jarretts know their business. So, I mean, they've been running the wrestling business for what, 30, 40 years now.
Yeah.
I mean, they must be doing something right.
You had many years on top of this business where you were in the limelight, and in ECW your character was a runaway success. In WWE you had legions of fans, more fans than the push reflected, in fact. Do you ever regret the fact that you didn't have the chance to play a more serious character, like a more serious contender type character, or were you always happy to do the parodies and the comedy styles that you played?
Yeah, well, no, I enjoyed doing the parodies and the comedies because that's what brought me to the dance. Raven saw me on the independent show, and the character I was doing at the time was a heel, but it was still similar to the Blue Meanie character, and that's what spawned them to give me the name, the look, and all that stuff. They tried to. The WWE wanted to turn the Blue Meanie character into a serious character, but the best thing they would have done was just give me a whole new character then if you want to turn me serious, because the Blue Meanie character was never about being serious. He's about the comic relief, and some parodies and stuff like that. But if the opportunity arose to do a serious character, I seriously would consider doing another character altogether instead of just being a badass Blue Meanie, because a badass Blue Meanie wasn't going to work. Yeah. And I think they were swinging that way when I was down in Memphis. We were experimenting with different looks and stuff like that. And then my grandma took ill while I was in Memphis, and then when I asked to go home to see my grandma, is when I got my call to be released. Yeah.
When you got released from WWE, it was an interesting time because the fans were so behind you. You went back to ECW after that. Were you able to rekindle your relationship with Paul? How did that come about?
Oh, Paul was fine. It's just ECW was in dire straits, and people were like, "Well, why didn't you go to WCW?" I was like, I did have a chance to go to WCW, but it's like picking or choosing. Do I get a ticket to ride the Titanic or the Hindenburg? They were both in bad shape at the time, and they were both going down. So if I'm going to go down with the ship, I'll go down with my friends. So that's pretty much why I picked ECW. I mean, Paul welcomed me back with open arms, and when I found out my grandma had passed, he was very cool. He was very consoling to me, because it was at an ECW show that I found out that she had passed. And he's like, if you want to leave, you can leave. And just like right before my match, I was like, no, let me do the match, and then I'll head back, because there's at that time, that part of the night, there's nothing I could do anyway. So, I mean, I just loved working for Paul, and even when I was up at the WWE, I missed working for Paul, because he had that creative genius. He knew what to do. Up in WWE, they pretty much relied on you to come up with your own angles and stuff like that. They're like, well, do you have any ideas for yourself? I was like, okay, I'll think of some stuff. And I would go back and think of some stuff, and they would go and give it to other wrestlers. I mean, there was times where, the one thing that was like pretty obvious was the one I came up with for myself to stalk one of the, I forget which female it was, the Blue Meanie, goes a little mental, stalks one of the divas.
Right.
And then this is around the time I presented to Bill Banks, and this is the time where everybody defected over to WCW, and they went and gave the angle to David Flair. Right. I was like, oh, man. And Al Snow, he had the same fate, too, because he was coming up with ideas for himself, and they were going and giving it to other people as well. Do you think? So, I mean, there was really no way to win in that situation. I mean, I can keep giving. They said they wanted me to think of ideas for myself, and when I did, they gave it to other wrestlers. And then when they released me, they said, "Well, we have nothing for you." It's like, well, I've been giving you all this stuff.
I've always been amazed by when they say that they have nothing for a wrestler, because to me, shouldn't that mean that they need to get new writers as opposed to new wrestlers? Isn't that what they should be doing?
That's an excellent point. I mean, I'm sitting there and they're asking me to come up with ideas. I'm like, well, isn't that your job?
Yeah.
I mean, who's the Blue Meanie to tell Vince McMahon what to do with his company and his characters?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I thought this was I mean, Paul was hands on. He's like, you're doing this. This is your angle. Here's what you say. Blah 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 blah. Paul was hands on with everybody. With Vince, it was just these writers, and they would ask you to come up with ideas for you. And if a writer's asking you to come up with an angle, I guess that just shows their incompetence.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, look at the product now. I mean, heaven help us. I mean, Raw's a little bit better than SmackDown, but I mean, that's saying a lot when that doesn't say much about SmackDown when they're the worst of the two shows right now.
Yeah. Well, you've been talking to the Blue Meanie, talking about 3PW. Thank you so much for joining us here today, and we look forward to seeing more 3PW here on the Wrestling Channel, including this big show coming up on the 21st very, very soon. Thank you for talking with us.
Thank you for the opportunity to come and talk to the fans of the Wrestling Channel.
Okay, it's competition time again. You want to see the great stuff we got? Go to the wrestlingchannel.tv/shop for all your merchandise needs from TNA, from Japan, from Ring of Honor, and much more. The UK, FWA, TWC, it goes on. And very soon we're going to have a Bagpipe Report t-shirt, and that's going to be the biggest seller of them all. You want 200 pounds worth of merchandise? All you got to do is win this very simple competition. The question is, what is Hulk Hogan's real name? Is it A, Terry Hogan, B, Terry Bollea, or C, Terry Boulder? You can text your answer to 88066. It's either Blake A, Blake B, or Blake C, depending on what your choice is. Each entry is £1.50, and the closing date is August 19th. We got letters, many letters. It's Q&A time again, and the first Q&A this week comes from James P. in Blackpool, who asks, Blake, what's your opinion of the crappy diva search that's taking up valuable Raw time every week? And do we really need another Raw diva to sit around and do nothing like Stacy Keibler? Well, that's quite the objective question there, James. Well, the opinion about it, I suppose the fairest way to answer it is in terms of a bit more of an industry perspective, is that if you're going to win $250,000 from WWE, are there other employees, are there other divas, are there other wrestlers who are scratching to make ends meet really going to appreciate it? Probably not. And are they using the divas they have to the best of their capacity? Probably not. What it comes down to is ratings. If the divas get the ratings, then all's fair in love and war, no matter what anybody has to say about it. If the divas don't work in the ratings, then they're spending $250,000 just to piss off their other employees. So far from the ratings information I've seen, nobody's that big a fan of the divas, and if you've heard any of the reactions on Raw, not the fake canned ones they put on over it, but the actual real reactions from fans, I don't think they care too much either. But that's the world of professional wrestling. Our next question comes from The Shad in Bristol, who asks the following question. Do you know where Shane and Stephanie McMahon have been, and will they ever return to WWE television in some sort of storyline? Well, Shane and Stephanie both work at WWE. Last I checked, Shane was in charge of new media. They're both McMahon's full through and through. They've been part of the business forever. I have no doubt that they're both going to be back in television sooner rather than later. Every time they peter out of television, they come back. They're not gone from WWE, only they're just not on camera right now. But I'd be very surprised if one or the either or both aren't back on screens sometime in the next 12 months. The next question comes from a text viewer who didn't actually include his name in the text, so we're going to call him Fred in Finglas. So Fred in Finglas asks the following question. Blake, who is your favorite wrestler and why have there been so many long title reigns? For example, Doug Williams, Triple H, and Samoa Joe. Well, Fred, interesting question. And when it comes to actual wrestlers, first of all, I've got too many favorite wrestlers to mention. I've always been a massive mark for Christopher Daniels. The very first time I ever saw him wrestle before anybody had heard of him, it was about 5 years ago in California. The guy walked through the curtain and you just knew he was money. The guy was amazing, and I've continued to be a fan of his to this very day. But there's dozens I could mention. When we talk about long title reigns now, it really depends on the situation. For instance, in WWE 5 or 10 years ago, you had Vince Russo booking for one thing. His direction was crash TV, let's throw things at fans, let's make their heads spin every week, let's change the championship as much as possible. Now Vince Russo isn't involved, and that's why there's been fewer title reigns. As well as that, right now they're in a building process. They don't have a huge number of top stars, the Steve Austins, the Rocks, Triple H is still there. They don't have the amount of star power that they once had on the very top, so now they're in a star building period. And when you're in a building period, you want to take one name and you want to establish it. And that's what Vince McMahon has been doing with Triple H the last couple of years. Same situation with Samoa Joe. If the Ring of Honor title changed hands every week, it wouldn't mean as much. Samoa Joe didn't come into Ring of Honor as a massive international superstar. He came in as a talented wrestler. So instead of hot-shotting the title back and forth, they decided to build it up and build it up. And it's the same thing with Doug Williams in the FWA. The FWA have allowed Doug Williams to go to NOAH and to go to the US. They couldn't stop him doing that, but they could certainly ask him to drop the title. Why don't they? Because it's good for them. Because as Doug Williams becomes more successful and makes a bigger name, they know they bet on a good horse, and he's doing the same thing for the championship. Everywhere he goes, it's, wow, he's already FWA champion. What does that mean? Who are FWA? And vice versa. Everything Doug does, he looks all the bit better because he's got that belt on his shoulder. And in wrestling, a belt can be an important currency for fans. So it all depends on the promotion and what stage they're at. Ring of Honor, FWA, and even WWE right now are in building stages, so they're choosing 3 very talented guys to put those belts on and elevate them to the moon. Now let's take a look at some of the upcoming events in the UK and Ireland. Premier Promotions presents every Thursday night from August 12th to September 2nd, the summer season of wrestling spectaculars at the Worthing Assembly Hall. Revolution British Wrestling, Saturday the 21st of August at Selbyk Hall in London. From Monday, August 9th, the World Association of Wrestling will run 3 weekly shows at the New Atlantis Resort in Great Yarmouth, ending on Monday, August 23rd. WCW Path to Destruction Tour, Whitley Bay Residents Association, Tyne and Wear, Friday, 27th of August. The next night, they're in Cortham Memorial Hall in Redcar, Saturday, 28th of August. And finally, the Starlight Suite, Tyne and Wear, once more, Sunday, 29th of August. That's 3 shows back-to-back from WCW, the Path to Destruction Tour. Lancashire plays host to Garage Pro Wrestling, GPW, as they have Revelations at the British Legion in Wigan, the 22nd of August. United Kingdom Pro Wrestling is at the Waterside Theatre, Long Lane, Southampton, on Friday, September 3rd. Okay, now let's take a little look at what's coming up this week on the Wrestling Channel. On CZW Fake U TV, we have Gabrielle versus Jeremy versus Jay Fury. And on a night of a triple 3-way, we finish up with Excalibur versus Jigsaw versus Spider Nate Webb. On to Major League Underground Television, it's CM Punk and Michael Shane versus Raven, and the spanking one Norman Smiley. In Ring of Honor High Impact TV, we revisit the 3-way dance as it's a Divine Storm versus Joey Matthews versus Christian York Thrill Fest. Then we open the vault with the World of Sport, Ray Steele versus Romani Riley, and Pete Carey versus Abe Ginsberg. And also remember to stay tuned for part 2 of the Ted DiBiase RF Shoot interview that's coming Monday. It's going to be fantastic. That about does it for me this week on the Bagpipe Report. It has been my pleasure to serve you, once again, the wrestling public. Make sure you check out the WrestlingChannel.tv for all your wrestling news, for upcoming shows, upcoming matches, forums, and a whole lot more. TheBagpipeReport.com, you got the whole show, exclusive interviews, and much, much more. Next week on the show, well, what are we going to have? We're going to have the top news, the top guests. We're talking to Harley Race. Hopefully he'll be dropping by to give us some words about his new book, about his new projects, about his appearance on Raw recently and his recent induction to the WWE Hall of Fame. Whole lot more coming up next couple of weeks of TBR. I'll see you next Friday night at 8 p.m. right here on the Wrestling Channel.
Bye.